just waiting for the recording to start. Okay. All right. Good afternoon. Welcome to the June 16th Technical Review Committee meeting. My name is Amy Alvey. I'm the Assistant Director here for Oldham County Planning and Development Services. Just a little brief overview. The purpose of this meeting is to review any proposed subdivisions or development plans prior to them going to the Planning Commission. That way they get all of their technical comments back from serving utility agencies as well as the public in advance of the Planning Commission meeting. It gives them the opportunity to revise their plans prior to their Planning Commission submission. So again, this is Technical Review Committee. This committee does not make any decisions about approving or denying the application. So they're basically going to give comments back to the applicant regarding their project of how they conserve the property or any adjustments that need to be made. So what the process will be, we'll have the applicant come forward. They'll give a brief overview of the project, and then we will go into agency comments from there, and then we'll open it up to public comment. If you have something public to say or ask a question, please come forward. Just state your name and address for the record. And then again, just be sure to keep your questions technical in nature, either to the applicant or to a serving utility agency. Can't guarantee that they'll have 100% of your answers today, but they'll take those down and be able to get those answered before the Planning Commission meeting or at that Planning Commission hearing. So at this time, we have two items on the agenda. The first one is docket 21-005, Goodwill of Crestwood. It's located at the 6400 block of West Highway 146 in Crestwood. They are requesting site plan review. The applicant is Goodwill Industries of Kentucky, and the engineer is Arnold Consulting Engineering Services Incorporated. So if we have someone from Arnold Consulting that wants to come up and give us a brief overview of the project, and just be sure to state your name and address for the record, please.
It's Aaron Arnold. I work for Arnold Consulting out of Bowling Green, Kentucky. You want my business address?
Yeah, that's fine.
136 South Park Drive, Suite 201, Bowling Green, Kentucky, 42103.
Okay. You just want to give us a brief overview of what the project is?
So we are looking at two pieces of land on Kentucky Highway 146 across from the middle school. Excuse me. And we're going to combine those pieces of property into one parcel, and we are proposing to build a little over 14,000 square foot building that will be a Goodwill Industries of Kentucky building, and then the associated parking and utilities with that.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Tom is your case manager, so we'll go through and give his staff comments and any other agency comments that he received.
Thank you, Ms. Alvey. Again, my name is Tom McIntyre, Senior Planner with Oldham County Planning and Development Services. I have about 13 comments. So, starting with the first, it will be to notate the point of access for construction vehicles, whether that be on Kentucky 146 or Potts Lane. I'll ask you to remove the and Louisville Metro's notation under the side access for from the development summary legend. Notate and label the bearings and dimensions for all property lines. On the northern property line, there's you can see a cell tower there. That is, I'm going to ask you to show the parcel line between that and the adjoining property. You can notate the size of the water main, size of the sanitary sewer, and the gas lines. That would be great. If you could show the existing fire hydrant on the west side of Kentucky 146. So it's at the northern property line, just on the other side of the Kentucky Highway there. You could locate and notate any purpose of any easements if applicable. If you could revise the floodplain note to reflect the floodplain map effective on March 23rd, 2021. If you could show any proposed detention if applicable, in addition to notating the direction of any stormwater flow. For the construction legend, the concrete pavement hatching is shown incorrectly on the plan, and there's a note for a dumpster enclosure, but that is not shown on the plan. And then per the Oldham County subdivision regulation section 72C, a traffic assessment will be required, and we have been in contact with your firm about that. In addition to a consolidation plan was approved on April 7th of this year, and so there's no point there. We don't have to require a consolidation plan because it's already been done. And that's all I have for my comments. We do have other comments from MSD. and those would be to MSD will need the applicant to submit a DFC, so downstream facilities capacity, to submit that request, which can be found on the MSD webpage under Submittal 1, and email to Kim Lockley, who is an Associate Engineer 2. Will then be presented at the weekly MSD internal capacity review meeting before a capacity approval letter can be issued. I can give you this as well before you leave. That's all I have.
Chief Turner?
One comment I have is we would like to see, it's not required, but put a Knox box on the building. If you're familiar with the Knox, but it. Okay.
Have a particular location.
Just you get going, or when you get going with just contact us and we'll. And you are going to have this sprinkler in the building, correct?
Yes.
Have to be at many square feet. That's all I had.
All right. Thank you, Chief. Mr. Sullivan?
I'm an Oldham County engineer. So, Mr. Arnold, we actually received a full construction plan set from you and sent a review letter. It came along with the stormwater quality management and erosion control permit application. You've got that review letter dated May 18th. So that really covers anything we would have for today. Just to review that for the group here, you will require the KYR 10 permit through the state since the land disturbance is greater than an acre. You've already provided the application for the stormwater quality management and erosion control permit with the county. Let's see, basin constructions. I don't believe we received any detention calcs with that, so if you could forward us the detention calcs to show this is in compliance with the Oldham County post-construction stormwater ordinance. You'll also coordinate with KYTC regarding the encroachment permit on Kentucky 146. Tom already mentioned the traffic assessment that's being required, and just any other red line notes we had in that plan set we sent to you. So I've got a copy of this brief letter for today that I gave to staff, and we'll give that to you also.
Thank you. Matt?
Anything other than we issued an address of 6394 West Highway 146. There was two legacy addresses there, but just to keep them separate for our purposes. So that'll be what the address of the new building will be. Other than that, I have nothing.
Mr. Williams?
I don't have anything because it doesn't impact the schools.
All right. Is there anyone in the public that would like to come forward to ask any questions in technical nature to the applicant or any serving utility agency at this time? Yes, ma'am. Last name?
CYMOUR. With the entrance going to be serviced off of Potts Lane, is that correct?
46. It'll have a 146 address.
Have a 146, okay. When it gets further into the process, we would prefer that the mail service, the mailbox be placed on Potts Lane. The carrier currently services through that parking lot of that strip mall and comes out to Potts Lane. And therefore, it's safer to have the mailbox posted there than on 146.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. The filing deadline, we have a tiered process for our new site plan review process, so they will not be required to go to the planning commission. So this is their last step here because they are not asking for any variances or waivers. So at this point, you'll just have to resubmit your plans based off all the comments. Once you get approval letters, then you can apply for building permits. All right? Thank you. All right. Next item on the agenda is docket 21-006 Parkview Townhomes. It's located at the 6800 block of West Highway 22 in Crestwood. This is for proposed development plan for townhomes. The applicant is Parkview Townhomes, and the engineering firm is Vincent Engineering and Land Surveying. So if the applicant wants to come forward and give us a brief overview. Mr. Baxter?
Good afternoon. I'm Bob Van Sam from Engineering Land Surveying here in LaGrange. We are here today to receive your all's comments regarding the Parkview Townhome proposed development in Crestwood, located on Highway 22. There's approximately 7.2 acres that was approved 10 or 12 years ago for patio home development that never did in the past, and the property's been for sale since then. My client is under contract to purchase this property and is proposing a unique townhome development that will have 76 units. You should have plenty of room on site for the required open space, detention basins. That's pretty much it.
Okay. I'll go through and read our comment letter as well as some agency letters that were received. This is our planning staff comment letter. A consolidation plat were required to combine the 3 tracts into one. Include a chart identifying the distances of lines L1, L2, and L3. Include the symbol for fire hydrants and the legend. Consult with Matt Tolar, GIS manager, for street names. Include the building setbacks to edge of pavement must be a minimum of 15 feet from any internal street, driveway, or parking area. Pavement width for internal streets per section 5.11 condominium subdivision design principles. Item D requires pavement width of 20 feet. The plan outlines 18. Add a note to the plan stating that roadways are private and will remain private and not be accepted into the county or city road network system. Include the owner information for the triangle property south of the proposed entrance, Michael and Glenetta Roberts. Stormwater flow should be notated on the plan, and all stormwater infrastructure, including basins, should be placed in an easement. Staff defers stormwater comments to the county engineer's office. No sidewalk shown on the second side street, and sidewalks should be considered on both sides of the streets as well. Under site statistics, include minimum open space required. Include parking calculations of minimum, maximum, and actual. If including garage parking in the minimum required, please add a note stating that. Proposed cul-de-sac is located in the 15-foot perimeter landscape buffer area in the 10-foot vehicle use area and should be relocated out of those areas. There are also 2 guest parking spaces located in the 25-foot setback and should be relocated out of the setback. Landscape plan conforming to the landscape regulations is required and should be submitted at the time of Planning Commission application submittal. A 15-foot wide, 3-foot tall, continuous screen perimeter landscape buffer area is required along all property lines abutting single-family property. And then also on the landscape plan, the vehicular use area will need to be observed and screened appropriately, including the cul-de-sac, hammerheads, and entrance roadway. Division 310 lighting requirements, Section 310.080, Category 2 and 3 requires multifamily developments to submit a photometric plan. This should be submitted at the time of Planning Commission application submittal. The access easement will be required, and access easement will be required for property at 6829 West Highway 22 to use the private road from the development road to access the property. And finally, a traffic assessment will be required and shall work with planning and engineering staff on the details of the assessment. That is planning staff's. And then I have a comment email from Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. The Parkview development has removed the entrance on the west side of the property at our request to minimize the number of access points. Even though they have increased the number of units as a result, it still does not pass our threshold in which we can require a traffic impact study to be performed. At this time, the state has no further comments on the development unless further changes are made. it in here somewhere. We received a comment letter from MSD. It says the applicant shall submit a DFC downstream facility capacity request, which can be found on the MSD webpage under Submittal 1 and emailed to Kim Locke. And it will then be presented at the weekly MSD internal capacity review meeting before a capacity approval letter can be issued. Also, any sanitary sewers located outside the public right-of-way will need to be within a public sanitary sewer easement. The other comment that I had, Oldham County Police Chief Greg Smith could not attend the meeting, but he did call and state that the proposed development would be patrolled by Oldham County Police and has no major concerns. That is all that I have. Don't have any others. Don't. So we will go on to other agency comments. Chief Turner, we'll start with you. Okay, Mr. Silliman.
Oldham County Engineer. Because the land disturbance, of course, will be greater than 1 acre, you'll be required to get the KYR10 permit through the Division of Water. Also, when you're ready with construction plans for our review, those will accompany the stormwater quality management and erosion control permit for our department. That will show the plans meet the post-construction and construction site runoff ordinance for the county. Ms. Alvey mentioned earlier about the note to be added about the roads being private, so some of these comments we'll need to address them during construction plan review because some of our review is based on the potential for the roads to be taken into the county. Some of those comments are with regard to the roadway width. It shows 9-foot lanes. The county standard would be 10 feet if they're taken in. Of course, there'd be right-of-way and setback and other issues to address if the roads were to be intended to be taken in by the county. We also noted the sidewalk on both sides of the roadways. Detention basins, again, provide the calculations to show that they meet the post-construction runoff ordinance. So the detention basins should typically be encompassed by a easement, as well as any public waters flowing through the project. Those would need to be an easement, and we can handle that with prior to record plat completion. You will still coordinate with KYTC with regard to the entrance, verify the internal roadways are suitable. The internal road geometrics are suitable for the traffic that's going to be going through there, garbage trucks, school buses, emergency vehicles. There are 2 hammerheads on here. We'll need to discuss those also at construction plan review because they don't meet the standard geometrics for county hammerhead or cul-de-sac. So they're just too small here. And then also with regard to the traffic generated, KYTC said they don't require a traffic impact study. It does meet the threshold for the county's traffic assessment. Data has already been requested from KIPTA for the streetlight data for that, and I believe we received it yesterday, so we can forward that information to you. We requested intersection data at the Williamsgate entrance and also east at the 329 and Highway 22 intersections. I've got a letter summarizing or detailing all those comments, and we can provide that to you. So.
Matt?
Like Amy said, you'll just have to get with me with the road names and the addressing. And that's all I have.
Mr. Williams?
Give me 1 second. I just had an emergency text message.
Uh-oh. No worries.
Okay. Real fast. The cul-de-sac, the big cul-de-sac on there, if you can make it 45 radius so that we can get a bus turned around in there should we have to bring a bus down that main street. And then looking at the capacity form, at 76 units, the impact for development would be, at this point, 36 K-12 students. The serving schools and campus would be Camden Station Elementary School, South Oldham Middle School, and South Oldham High School. Standing at that capacity point, it's 110.51% of capacity. But when you also add in the Crestwood Commons, which is an impact of 90 additional students, that would push the overall final capacity to 114.34%, which would then, based on the phasing and the allotment plans, it would net 18 permits per year.
Okay, thank you. I did provide a copy. Oh, do you have any comments for USPS? Yeah.
There's a cluster mailbox and provided that space. We have no issue with that.
Thank you. I did provide all of the comments that staff received either by mail or email to the serving utility agencies as well as the applicant, and I have summarized those in a spreadsheet, so I'll wait until all the public comment is up, and then if any of those have not been commented on, then I will read those into the record as well. So anybody that wants to come up and speak, again, just please keep your questions technical in nature, and just state your name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, if I might start out. I'm Steve Porter, 2406 Tucker Station Road, Louisville 40299. I represent Mr. and Ms. Mosley. If you've got a copy of the plan in front of you, or if you're familiar with it, the upper right-hand corner of this proposal is where the Mosley property backs up to this proposed project. Their address actually is on 329. That's where their driveway comes in on, but they abut this property, which is on Highway 22. There are, Mr. Mosley has sent a very detailed and good letter to staff, to Amy, and we'll continue to rely on some of the comments that are in there. But a number of those things I think have been answered today about school capacity, traffic, of course. Everybody always has traffic concerns, but since my clients are on not on the street that this is coming out on, that's not as big a concern for them since they're on 329. But there are some really big issues with their property. One is, and again, my client has sent photographs of the creek that comes from this proposed development down through their property. And that creek already, even with just a piece of vacant land or just a few houses on that land now, very often overflows and causing erosion on the Mosley's property. So we're very concerned about the viability of any detention basins on this property. There are, I think, 3 detention basins proposed. The final one that leads into the Mosley property seems to be awfully small. It doesn't seem to cut it from a standpoint of preventing the flow of water during a severe rainstorm. And we've had some just, here in the last few weeks. And that creek was overflowing and creating some erosion on the Mosley property. So they're very concerned about a project that has a lot of rooftops and pervious pavement, making sure that the detention basins are going to be adequate to really slow down, not just equalize what is coming off now, but to slow it down, which I know that your requirements are. So, but I think that's something that I hope staff and county engineer will look at very carefully, and MSD, because that is a serious potential problem for the Mosleys. Another serious potential problem, and again, that creek runs in a deep ravine. I just spent 2 days at Red River Gorge and saw a lot of ravines and creeks and waterfalls and everything, and then this creek on their property, there are small waterfalls and a great decline there, but there's a big ravine just off the proposed residential property, the townhome property, and it's dangerous. It really is. It's heavily wooded right now, and I haven't had a chance to really analyze or find out what what trees are going to be taken. We're concerned about loss of tree canopy here for the wildlife's sake and for viewshed. But that ravine could be very dangerous for kids who are living in those townhomes. And we would want to be sure that between a good landscape buffer and an adequate fence along the property line of the Mosleys to prevent any trespass across there because of the danger of that ravine. I was just there an hour ago, and believe me, it's deep and heavily wooded, and if some 10 or 12-year-old got adventurous and went down in there, it would be dangerous. So we think that the townhomes at that final hammerhead cul-de-sac at the end are really just too close to that ravine and too close to that creek. And we would hope that the detention basin at that end could be increased and possibly replace some of the townhomes at that end. And we will discuss this with the applicant. I haven't had a chance to do that yet, but we would hope that the farther away those townhomes could be from that ravine and creek, the more safe it would be for all parties. So those, and then again, the ravine and the structure down in there, you have, probably some small caves and things. There's a large wildlife population, including bats, and any disturbance to the tree canopy and the underbrush problem or situation on that property could be detrimental to wildlife. And again, we would like to see the project moved a little further away from that ravine and that treed area to protect not only people, but to protect wildlife in that area, and to also reduce any heat island effects that might be there because of all of the pervious pavement and the rooftops, etc. So those are the main issues that I think my clients have. We will reach out I was unable to attend the neighborhood meeting. I had a planning commission meeting in Louisville at the time. But we will reach out to the applicant and see if we can make some agreements on keeping more tree canopy and getting it away from that ravine. And Mr. Mosley, if he'd like to speak, or yeah.
My name's Martin Mosley. As Steve mentioned, we live at 6416 Highway 329. Steve pretty much addressed our kind of major concerns. I do have one kind of question, Jim, maybe you'll like that answer. So I understand detention basins, I understand how the new development is designed, and we can calculate the amount of stormwater as a result of the new development. What I don't understand is how do we forecast or predict the current stormwater already edging? And the reason I'm asking that is because I think I've submitted numerous photos where, notwithstanding the new development, the amount of stormwater hitting the creek, in my mind, is already kind of excessive. So my worry is that detention basin, if you just look at the surface area, it appears to be a lot smaller than the area that currently floods my property. That's my question. How do we know how much water is? Okay. Right. So someone's going to, because there's numerous kind of storm drains and whatnot that already. So and so someone's going to do a survey, and they're going to identify the location of all these current kind of storm drains and whatnot.
It depends on the drains. Typically, they don't have to identify each individual drain, but they'll look at, again, the whole watershed, and based on the topography and the impervious surface on that watershed, determine what the flow is. That all contributes to the point source.
The creek originates, outside of the new proposed.
So their analysis will take that into account.
The entire watershed, just not that piece of property.
Okay,
Everything that would run to it.
Yeah, you draw a big line around all the peaks, which could be well outside the project area, and that'll tell him what the flow is coming into there, what the existing flow, and they're not supposed to exceed that existing flow.
So, is there any, calculation's one thing, but what we're seeing in real life is another, right? I'm sure somebody at some point in time, done some calculations, and they determined that the amount of water they currently put in my creek was sufficient. Now, clearly it's not. So, somewhere in the past, when someone did these calculations, it's not correct. So do we get to consider real life?
The calculations are based on really decades old theoretical analysis and empirical analysis to come to where we are, and it's widely accepted across the U.S. and greater. So,
but in this particular occasion, we've got photographic video evidence that these calculations haven't, they're clearly not accurate because they're flooding.
There have been no calculations done.
Done.
Just telling me there's a lot of water going through there, so that's an existing condition they just can't exceed.
I made the assumption because there's lots of kind of, you can see there's man-made drains feeding the creek at certain points. So I made the assumption that someone must have done calculations in the past.
For individual culverts, they might have been analyzed. Sure.
Okay, that's all the questions I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have comments? Come forward and state your name and address for the record, please.
Amanda Dreckman, live at 3020 Pioneer Place, Crestwood. A lot of my questions and concerns have been addressed. I'm really concerned about the loss of wildlife habitat. Are there any local programs where a developer, if he's going to wipe out all the trees and change the slopes, are there programs where he would have to compensate for that loss? Like, I know there are in some communities.
No.
Those are generated or initiated. There's blue line streams and they have to work through the Corps of Engineers. I'm not aware of any blue line streams on the property, so that might not be initiated.
Will there be any analysis done on how the loss of tree canopy will affect the microclimate and the air quality in the local area?
There's no environmental work.
And I really thought that you weren't allowed to totally change the natural flow of water through a property where it affects people downstream.
On that view.
The intent is not to affect their intent is to complete their calculations and design this so it does not exceed what is currently going on to the next property and everyone down.
Depleting, I mean, you're depleting many ponds and streams down the way.
If they still release the current amount, then it's staying the same.
That runoff's going to have insecticides and pollutants from cars, but I just think this is a big mistake. But
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
My name's Glenetta Roberts. I'm at 6823 West Highway 22. the property that the easement goes through. And you talked about a number of things in your first list of things, and I wasn't clear what that was. Is that things that are going...
Comments based off the plan that they've submitted.
Uh-huh.
So they have to make those updates and revisions to the plan before they can resubmit for Planning Commission.
Okay, so I heard some of them, but so there were two, at least a couple of them that pertain to my property. Could you just read them one more time? One of them talks about the triangle.
The only one, it says include the owner information for the triangle property located at the south of the proposed entrance. So they don't have that identified that you own that. So I have that on there.
Something about the right of way.
An access agreement will be required for the property at 6829 West Highway 22 to use the private road from the development road to access their property.
So that's saying that the development has to allow the property that currently has an easement to still have an easement. Okay. I still have a question as to whether the developer has a right to use that easement myself, but I mean, I can address that outside of this committee, but I still have that question. And then in addition to that, at what point will the traffic study happen, and will you know if there's going to need to be any kind of turn lane, etc.?
Required to be submitted with the Planning Commission application. So whenever they submit their Planning Commission application, they'll submit that report with the findings as well.
Okay. So before there would be another meeting?
Yes, ma'am.
And then you talked in your list of things about barriers and our buffers. Our property is zoned commercial, so they're not required to put buffers, but it said something in there about a buffer.
It's based on the zoning. So your property is used for residential purposes, so it would require the same buffering.
Okay, that's interesting. And then the road, is there something required as a buffer between the road and the neighboring property?
Vehicle use area. So they have to provide buffering for that vehicle use area. So the vehicle use area, they have to provide a 15-foot wide, 3-foot high continuous perimeter landscape buffer. Then the vehicle use area will have to be observed and screened appropriately, including the cul-de-sac and the hammerheads. So it depends on where that vehicle use area is. But I think it's, I have to get my book, but is it 7 feet tall continuous screen?
And then I had one last question. This one came from my husband, who couldn't be here, and I don't really understand it, but he was concerned about sewers and whether there would be which I know the sewer people are not here, any necessity for other people and these guys upgrading their sewers, because we've been told in the past that it's almost at capacity in that area. Do you have any knowledge about that?
It was submitted is that they'll have to submit they have to provide a downstream facility capacity request. So they'll submit their plans to MSD, and MSD will determine if any lines have to be upgraded or pump stations have to be installed or upgraded to take the flow.
And then that information will be before there's another meeting with you guys.
To submit their plans to MSD. That's not necessarily saying that they have to be approved by MSD prior to that. If MSD doesn't approve them, then the project would not move forward on their side.
Okay, but will we, when you guys approve the project, you'll have that, if it gets to the point where you guys were to approve the project, you would have that information?
Not necessarily, no, because they have to submit their construction plans to MSD. So until they won't, 99
could approve it, but then MSD could not approve it.
If
So you might not know that information.
But for them to move forward, if they have to do upgrades to a pump station, lines or something of that nature, or the plant doesn't have capacity, something of that nature.
Okay.
They wouldn't move forward with their project at that time.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that has questions, technical in nature, to anyone or the applicant? Seeing none, the next step is the applicant would have to apply for the Planning Commission hearing An example would be the next filing deadline is June 30th, which is the last Wednesday of each month, and the Planning Commission meets on the fourth Tuesday. So if they were to apply by June 30th, their hearing would be July 27th. So if you received notice of this hearing, you'll also receive notice of any other upcoming meetings and public hearings such as the Planning Commission. So seeing no more comments, then we'll stand adjourned. Thank you.